The church in Copper Ridge felt colder than the October wind outside. The wooden floor creaked under every shifting foot, and the old walls held a smell of hymns and quiet judgment. Eleanor Wade stood at the front in a borrowed wedding dress that hung loose on her thin frame. Its lace was worn and yellow, and the prairie roses in her shaking hands were already wilted. She stared at the door 12 steps away and wondered if she could run. She knew she couldn't. Every person in town had shown up to watch her marry Clayton Hartwell, the richest rancher in 3 whole counties. Some felt sorry for her, most judged him. Everyone whispered. Clayton stood beside her, tall and broad-shouldered, with a calm face that showed nothing. He held his hat in both hands, eyes set forward, steady as the mountains behind his ranch. She had expected a cruel man, a hard man, but when she finally forced herself to glance at him, she saw only stillness. No anger, no pride, just quiet. The minister's voice drifted through the church, but Eleanor barely heard the words. Her father wasn't there. He couldn't bear to look at her after agreeing to the marriage. The bank had been ready to take everything from him, and a stranger had offered a deal. Pay the debt if Eleanor married Clayton Hartwell. Her father had cried as he told her. He still agreed. She was not asked what she wanted. When the minister asked her if she took Clayton as her husband, her throat tightened. The room leaned toward her, waiting, pressing in. "I do," she whispered. Her voice cracked like a thin branch in winter. The minister turned to Clayton. "And do you, Clayton James Hartwell?" Clayton didn't answer with the words everyone expected. "I will." A ripple moved through the crowd. People glanced at one another, whispering. Eleanor looked at him again, surprised. His jaw was tight. His gaze stayed forward. He still hadn't looked at her once. "I now pronounce you man and wife." The words felt heavy on her shoulders. Clayton turned, finally meeting her eyes, and offered his arm. She stared at it, her hand hanging in the air, frozen between fear and duty. After a few heartbeats, she placed her hand on his arm. His grip was careful, not forcing, just steady. They walked down the aisle through a blur of whispers and stares. Outside, the wind cut sharp across the churchyard. Clayton helped her into the wagon without a word. His movements were controlled, almost too careful. When she flinched at his touch, he stepped back with a quiet understanding she didn't expect. "Name's Clayton," he said softly, taking the reins. "I reckon you know that already." She nodded without speaking. "You all right, Miss Wade?" "It's Mrs. Hartwell now." The words tasted bitter. He didn't react right away. He only clicked to the horses, guiding them toward the foothills and the wide, empty land stretching ahead. "Only if you want it to be," he said after a long moment. Eleanor watched the church shrink behind them. The town watched them disappear. The Hartwell Ranch appeared as they crossed the valley, rising strong from the land. A wide porch wrapped around the house, and warm smoke curled from the chimney. It was larger than her father's home, larger than anything she'd ever stepped into. Clayton helped her down, but kept his distance when she pulled away. Inside, the house felt warm and lived in. The stone fireplace glowed with steady flame, and the scent of coffee drifted through the room. He walked her upstairs and opened a door to a room with a quilted bed and a window facing east. There was a lock on the inside of the door. Clayton pointed to it. "You can use that. I won't knock unless you ask me to." Eleanor stared at the lock, unsure if she should feel relief or fear. "You understand?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she whispered. Clayton stepped back. "Supper's downstairs if you're hungry." He closed the door behind him. Eleanor turned the lock and listened to the click. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands still trembling. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She only sat there, in a silence too heavy for one heart to carry. Downstairs, Clayton ate alone, with 2 plates set before him. Hers stayed untouched. After a long moment of staring at it, he wrapped warm biscuits in a napkin and left them outside her door without knocking. Morning came gray. She found the biscuits still there, cold, but honest. Downstairs, she heard voices. Clayton and Silas, the ranch hands she'd seen the day before. Town's already talking. Silas said. Town can keep its opinions, Clayton replied. They're saying, you bought yourself a pretty bargain. A pause. She's not a bargain. She's my wife. Eleanor felt her breath catch. Something inside her loosened. Something else tightened. That evening she found fresh bread on the table, still warm. She didn't thank him. He didn't ask. 3 days passed. Quiet days. Careful days. She barely spoke. Clayton never pushed. Their lives moved around each other like two shadows, unsure if they should meet. On the 4th morning, she came down for coffee. Clayton sat at the table with his ledger. He looked up. Morning. Morning. She sat across from him. Her hands shook around the cup. Why? She asked suddenly. The word escaped before she could stop it. Clayton looked at her. Why did you agree to marry me? He closed the ledger, leaned back, and studied her with eyes that seemed to hold more truths than he ever spoke. Man came to me with a contract, he said. Said it'd help both sides. I'm alone here. Thought maybe it'd be good to have someone. You didn't know I had no choice, she whispered. No, he said softly. I didn't. The moment stretched between them. Heavy, real. I'm sorry, he said. She looked up, startled. If I'd known the truth, he said, I'd have stopped it. Her chest tightened. But I didn't know until I saw your face at the altar, he continued. I saw fear. I saw hurt, and I realized the truth too late. They stared at each other. You're my wife, Clayton said quietly, but that don't mean I own you. The words settled deep in her heart. A knock came. Clayton opened the door to find a letter waiting. He read it, then tossed it into the fireplace without hesitation. They want to throw a welcome reception, he said. We're not going. We have to, she whispered. No, Clayton said. I'll handle the town. That night, for the first time, Eleanor left her door slightly open. A small gesture, a first step, a fragile beginning. Eleanor woke before dawn. The sky outside still a deep blue. The house felt different now. Not warmer, not safer, but less like a cage. She washed her face, tied her hair back, and walked downstairs. Clayton was already in the kitchen pouring coffee, the steam rising between them like a quiet peace offering. Morning, he said. Morning. Her voice still carried caution, but not fear. Clayton watched her with that same unreadable calm he always carried, like a man who held storms inside but refused to let them show. He slid a cup of coffee toward her. Got a long day ahead. Fences need checking. Snow's coming sooner than it should. I can help, she said. He paused, surprised. If you want. I want to learn, she said, steady this time. He nodded, a small nod, but real. They rode out to the west pasture, frost glittering on the tall grass. Eleanor held the saddle horn tight at first, but Clementine, the gentle mare Clayton had chosen for her, moved slow and easy. The air was cold enough to sting her cheeks, but the world felt wide, and the ranch stretched in every direction like a place that didn't judge her. You're doing fine, Clayton said as he rode beside her. Eleanor didn't answer, but something warm moved through her chest. For the first time, she felt a shadow of pride. They spent hours checking fence posts, tightening wire, and clearing brush. Clayton taught her how to use tools she'd never handled before. His hands guided hers only when needed, never lingering, never crowding. When she slipped in the mud, he caught her elbow. When she steadied herself, he let go. By midday, she was sweating, breathless, and for the first time in months, almost alive. On the ride back, Clementine nudged her shoulder, and Eleanor laughed. Short, surprised, real. Clayton heard it. His eyes softened, and a small smile touched the corner of his mouth, like a man who'd forgotten how to smile but was relearning slowly. That afternoon, they rode into town for supplies. Copper Ridge was small, and the moment they stepped off the wagon, whispers curled through the street like dust in the wind. There they are. A girl bought with money. Hartwell finally lost his mind. Clayton heard every word but didn't react. He stood tall beside her, his presence strong enough to make some people shift uneasily. Inside the general store, Mrs. Hawkins weighed flour without looking at Eleanor. Her mouth was tight, disapproving. Eleanor kept her chin up, but something inside her twisted painfully. When they stepped out, a drunk cowboy leaned against the post, grinning wide. "Well now," he drawled, "look at the new Mrs. Hartwell." Boy, Hartwell, bet she didn't come cheap. Eleanor froze. Shame burned hot in her cheeks. Clayton stepped forward, slow, controlled, deadly quiet. "You got something to say," he said. "You say it to me." The cowboy's grin wavered. His eyes flicked to Clayton's broad shoulders, then to the cold fire in his eyes. "It was a joke," he muttered. "Then it wasn't funny." Quote. Clayton didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The cowboy backed up and disappeared around the corner. Eleanor felt her knees weaken. Clayton didn't touch her, didn't try to comfort her. He simply walked beside her, steady as stone. On the ride home, she whispered, "I'm sorry." He turned to her. "For what?" "For all this, for the way they look at you." "They can look however they want," he said. "It don't change what's true." "And what's true?" she asked. He was quiet for a long moment. "That you're here, that you're safe. That matters more than gossip." She stared at him, trying to understand the man beside her. He didn't treat her like property, didn't demand obedience. He gave her space, safety, and choices she'd never had before. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once. "You're welcome." When they got home, she found him watching her plant tulip bulbs near the porch. She pressed each one into the earth with careful fingers. "For spring," she said. "You think you'll still be here come spring?" he asked softly. She looked up, met his eyes. "Yes," she said, surprising herself. "I think I will." Something shifted in the air between them, warm and fragile. Clayton nodded and went inside, but when he reached the porch steps, he paused. "Eleanor." "Yes." "I'm glad." Then he walked away. That night, she couldn't sleep. The house settled around her, warm and quiet, but her thoughts pulled her downstairs. She stopped when she saw Clayton on the porch, a folded photograph in his hands, the moonlight silver on his shoulders. He didn't hide the picture when she stepped closer. He just looked at her with tired eyes. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "No." She sat beside him, close enough to feel his warmth but not touching. She nodded toward the photograph. "Who is she?" Clayton let out a slow breath, like a man telling a story that hurt to speak. "Mary," he said. "My wife. And our son." Eleanor's heart clenched. "They died," he said. "Childbirth. 5 years ago." She swallowed. "I'm sorry." "I am too," he said quietly. "Some nights I think I've made peace with it. Other nights," he shook his head. Eleanor looked at the picture, at the woman who came before her, at the life Clayton had once had. "Do you still love her?" "Every day," he said simply. Then he looked at Eleanor. "But grief don't mean you stop living." The wind moved through the yard, soft and cold. "You're a good man," she said. Clayton gave a soft laugh. "Town wouldn't agree. Town doesn't know you." "And you do?" he asked. She hesitated. "I'm starting to." He smiled. Not wide, not bright, just real. They stayed there until the cold chased them inside. When Eleanor went upstairs, she left her door open just a little, warm lamplight spilling into the hall. A silent thank you. A silent trust. The next day, life moved forward. They worked the ranch side by side, shared meals at the same table, spoke more, laughed a little. And for the first time since the wedding, Eleanor felt the faint outline of something she didn't have a name for. Maybe it was comfort. Maybe hope. Maybe something more. But Copper Ridge wasn't done with them yet, and the storm waiting ahead would test everything they had begun to build. Snow covered Copper Ridge in a thin white blanket the morning everything changed. The sky was bright, the air sharp, and the church bell rang across the valley as if calling the whole town to witness what was coming. Clayton Hartwell had promised Eleanor he would make a statement. He hadn't told her what it was, only that it would silence the whispering town. Only that it would show them she was not something he bought. Only that she was free. Eleanor tried to be brave as they rode toward the church. Her hands were cold around the reins, her stomach tight with nerves. Clayton rode beside her, calm like he always was, but she saw the tension in his jaw. He was preparing for a fight. The same pews, the same faces, the same soft murmurs greeted them when they walked inside. Some women stared with narrowed eyes. Some men whispered behind their palms. The same church where she once stood trembling in a yellowed dress now felt like a stage for a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to hear. They sat down together in the front pew. The service began like any other. Hymns, scripture, prayers. Then Clayton stood. The room went still. Reverend Hayes blinked, startled. "Mr. Hartwell?" "With your permission, Reverend," Clayton said. "I'd like to speak." Hayes hesitated, then nodded. "Go ahead." Clayton walked to the front, slow, measured. He pulled a folded paper from his coat and faced the whole town. "Most of you know how Eleanor came to me," he began. "Some of you think I bought her. Some think she was forced. Some think she was a bargain." A few murmurs rose from the back pews. "You're wrong." His voice was steady but carried like thunder in the quiet church. Eleanor's breath caught. Her hands tightened in her lap. Clayton unfolded the paper. "This here is the deed to the northern quarter of my ranch, 200 acres. Good land. Water rights, worth more than most folks in this room will ever see." People leaned forward. Mrs. Dalton went pale. "As of yesterday," Clayton said, "this land belongs to Eleanor Hartwell. Hers alone. Her name is on the deed. She can sell it, work it, or walk away from it any time she chooses." Gasps filled the church. "She is not my property," Clayton said. "She is my partner, and she has been since the day she stepped onto my land." He looked at Mrs. Dalton directly. "And anyone spreading lies about her, or about us, can come say it to my face." Silence, heavy, sharp. Clayton walked back to the pew and sat beside Eleanor. Without hesitation, he took her hand. Slowly, Eleanor rose to her feet. Every gaze snapped toward her. "I came here with nothing," she said, voice soft but steady. "I was scared, alone, judged by people who never asked what happened." Her eyes swept the room. "My father was desperate. The town knew it. None of you helped him. None of you helped me." People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but Clayton did, not with money, with kindness, with decency, with respect. She looked at him then, heart pounding. "I choose him," she said, "not because I have to, because I want to." Clayton's fingers tightened gently around hers. Mrs. Porter, the oldest woman in Copper Ridge, stood with effort. Her voice cracked with age but carried clearly. "I was wrong about you both," she said, "and I'm sorry." One by one, heads nodded. Some faces softened, some didn't. But something in the room shifted. Reverend Hayes cleared his throat. "Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell," he said. "Let us pray." After the service, people approached. Quiet words. Awkward apologies. Respect where there had once been judgment. Clayton and Eleanor walked out together. The cold sun fell across them, warm despite the snow. For the first time since the wedding, the town didn't look at Eleanor with pity or scorn. They looked at her with something closer to respect. At home, the house felt different. Lighter, warmer. She stood in the yard, staring at the land. Her land, stretching across the valley. "You gave me freedom," she whispered to Clayton. He shook his head. "No," he said softly. "You took it." She stepped closer, looking into his steady eyes. "Clayton?" "Yeah? Do you regret marrying me?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "No, you?" She smiled, small and true. "No." Days passed, snow melted, sunlight returned. The world slowly shifted from white to brown, to the faint promise of green. Eleanor planted apple saplings on her land in early spring. Tiny, fragile things that wouldn't bear fruit for years. Clayton found her kneeling by the third tree, hands in the soil. "Those won't be ready anytime soon," he said. "Then it's a good thing I'm not going anywhere." Clayton stood beside her, quiet, solid, steady, like always. Need help? He asked gently. Always. They worked side by side, setting roots into the earth like they were planting pieces of a future that belonged to both of them. That night, they ate together at the kitchen table. Not across from each other, side by side. A small thing, but it meant something. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Eleanor stood at the fence line, dividing her land from his. Clayton stepped beside her. Want me to take it down? She shook her head. Leave it. Why? She looked at the fence, then at him. Reminds me I chose to cross it. Clayton's expression softened. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. I'm proud of us, she answered. They walked back toward the house, hand in hand, their footsteps slow, steady, and sure. The door stood open, warm lamplight spilling across the porch. Inside, the fire crackled, supper waited, and the home felt full. Eleanor paused on the threshold. Ready? Clayton asked. Yes, she said. I am. They stepped inside together, and for the first time it felt like the beginning of the life she had chosen.